Johnny,
Buckeye.
how are we?
What up? I'm doing all right. I'm going back to Ohio this weekend.
Oh, good for you, dude. Go see
There
family.
you go. Yep.
Okay, great. I thought yesterday was a pretty interesting day. What did you think? What stood out for you? We got to watch some football together.
Well, first of all, it was very hot, so that stood out very much.
It was quite hot.
So it prepares you for training camp. That's good. So a couple things. First of all, obviously I'd say red zone work, but it's just, with the quarterbacks and receivers. And I don't know, like anything that jumped out in particular. Like I went and watched Jamin Davis doing some edge rushing drill work before they get into like 7-on-7 stuff and just taking some snaps with, with the edge rushers. And because clearly they want to see what more can he do. And I think Dan Quinn talked about that, not just with him, but somebody brought up Emmanuel Forbes and returning kicks. And so like, this is the time of year you do stuff like that. And that was one thing. And just, can he do that? I still like, watching Daniels throw the ball. I mean, he has good arm talent where, see a guy get open, unload it now, quick compact release. We've seen that and we continue to see that. And I think what you don't see a lot of is a kid who looks lost. You don't see that. Like there are going to be times where maybe a guy's not open, but that's different than not knowing where to go with the ball. So like that stuff continues to jump out as well. And then the other thing, what the also jumped out was yesterday, I talked about this on the podcast too, but Terry McLaurin just kind of getting pretty pumped up over a couple things. One was a pass to him, but one was the ball to Jahan that I think the team posted on its website.
That really pretty pass to Daniels?
Yeah, where they were clearly using me for clicks because I was in the background. But I think
clicks.
like on that, there you go. But on that play, what had McLaurin so pumped up was how Jahan got away at the line and how he used his hands at the line. And like, so this is the time of the year where you start to see little or hear little things like that or see it and wonder what is it going to mean down the road?
Well, and one of the things Terry was kind of yelling was something to the effect of like, yeah, when you use your hands, they can't stop you. And I didn't know, I didn't know if that was related to getting off at the line or the play Jahan made on that ball. That was like a fingertip catch. And if you remember some of the trouble he got into last year with a little bit of drops, I think he started using his body a little bit. And he's a hands catcher.
He is, but on that play, you can't use your body because you got to stretch out. And he's always been good at making contested or circus type catches. But the one thing Terry did say at the line, because he did point out like using your hands like that at the line, they're not going to be able to stop you. And so like that, because that's been a thing for him is how do you get away at the line? Because he's a terrific route runner. When he gets beyond that point, I think he's their best route runner, but you have to get away from that point. And so I think that's why, like, if he's able to do that consistently, it just opens things up for him and everybody else.
Totally. You don't want to read too much into any one play in 7-on-7 in May, but what did you think?
So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it anyway. Forbes. I think it was Mariota because Mariota kind of got the first reps yesterday, which I thought was almost Dan Quinn sending a message to people to not worry about the depth chart right now.
Right.
But Forbes was in pretty good coverage on De'Ami Brown. And some of this was kind of junk. The play probably wouldn't have counted because when you have a slow developing 7-on-7 play and quarterback's rolling and rolling, like it's probably in real life, that ain't going to happen.
Right.
But Brown breaks back corner of the end zone. And it was like in the transition from Forbes being in good coverage to Brown making a secondary move, he like lost a half second. And then Mariota's able to fire that ball in there. If Forbes had just turned his head, it's at least a PBU.
Yeah, and he stumbled a little bit on the play on his break too, which didn't help him. But you're right. Like that's the hard part with sometimes 7-on-7. You have to take into account, okay, if there's a pass rush here, what happens? And it's impossible to always know because here's the other thing. Like in some cases, those are the kind of plays we've seen this team give up, and any team where there is an extended play. So, it's not, especially with the quarterbacks this team has, and Jaden in particular, and Mariota's been able to extend plays, just not hurt teams as much with that. But with Daniels, that's what he's going to do. So you do have to work against that. I mean, you have a couple guys in the division who have done that against you in the NFL. So, but I think some of that too with Forbes, I'll be curious to see how he progresses throughout the summer. And you're right, like you do not get caught up in depth chart stuff and who's working where. You do notice it, but you don't like, okay, what does it mean? Like, you're right. Like Mariota took the first snaps in 7-on-7 or with the first team, what would be considered, I guess, the first group last week. But I think we all know that, and Daniels knows, the team knows, once the kid is once he's ready, he is going to be the starter, whether that's on August 1st, July 27th, or September, early in September, right? So it's just, there's been no reason to think he wouldn't get there. But with Forbes, there is part of what his game is the aggressiveness. And I still think, like, one of the things he struggled with last year were some of those double moves. And so how do you stay aggressive while not hurting yourself if something like that happens, right? That'll be a key for him going forward. And it's funny because, like, last week I was standing next to Fred Smoot while watching some of Forbes' game, and which is always fun standing next to Smoot. But some of that was just like maybe the way, in some, how you're, staying in your back pedal and all that, and how the balance you have and all that. And I think it seems like he's getting a little bit better with that, but those are some of the technique things that I think can help him with that, if it comes to that. You're right. Cause like he was in really good position, and then it's like, well, we don't know how it goes once you start to extend as a quarterback in that drill.
John, this is your fourth, maybe fifth different group of watching, incoming, outcoming.
Right.
What's your gut tell you? A lot of times you've done this as often and as long as you've done it, you pick up a feel for the vibe. What is it with you?
Oh, I think it's renewed energy for sure.
Right.
And you hear that from the players. And listen, Doc, like, how important that is when guys feel better about going to work.
Amen.
And feel better about who they're working with. And it's not just, it's position coaches as well. I mean, if you don't have good position coaches, I don't care who the head coach is, you're not going to succeed, because you need those guys. And so, like, it seems like this team has some energy and multiple rooms in the building. And I think that's important. But, like, I know it's May, and I know that, but I don't know that you've heard it to this extent in the past, right? And you have to worry, like, sometimes, like, okay, what's real and what isn't? And there's still so much to learn about it. But I definitely think there's a renewed energy, and it's a little bit more than just, oh, there was change. And I think for some people like John Allen, I think that it's belief that it will get better. Just because of not just the change in coaches, but just the change in the organization overall. It's so much healthier and better set up for a long-term success than it has been in, let's say 24 years.
Totally. And we're actually going to play John Allen's audio a little later, but I do think you could hear him talk. But, Keim, we were also sitting there as we waited late into the afternoon for one last player yesterday. Doc, I'll tell you that story off air.
Okay.
But, we've also sat there and heard the new energy and new vibes and all that. But you almost have to – I almost wonder if fans are a little hesitant to fully buy in because they've heard it so much. But you got to understand, when you walk in, there's construction going on. They are spending money. They're creating new departments to try to win on the edges. The reality is it's entirely different out there.
Yeah, it is. And I don't blame fans for taking a wait and see approach. I would too, because here's the other thing. Our job is to be out there. So we're going to see and feel it much sooner. And it's just like, there have been players in the past where maybe we see and hear things far earlier than they're going to be able to, like, fully, okay, I get what you're saying. Right. And so, like, I don't blame them if they have a lot of PTSD from the past where they say, okay, this all sounds great, but let's see it on the field because I've been burned before. But you're right. Like they're investing. I would say they're investing more in the infrastructure of the organization as far as like, improving things, maybe even little things like in the cafeteria, right? They got the D+ and that in the NFLPA survey. And it wasn't about how good the food was. I mean, the food is good out there, but it was, there are little things that maybe could be improved, and they've listened to what the players have said and then trying to do that. So like little things like that add up. And again, having said that, it's still going to come down to how you're doing on the field. Like you can have a better cafeteria, but if you're not producing, well, the fans say, well, I don't care. Give them Burger King if they win, right? But for players, it matters. And I do think, the other thing is, in the past, we would not have seen Bobby Wagner sign here. Just wouldn't.
Right.
And what level he can still play at, I don't know. He's still a productive player for sure, but his cachet gives something because he still can play, and he also is obviously a good leader. So, like, I think things like that also add to what's going on. And then, with a young quarterback comes hope, and Jaden Daniels provides it. And I mean, again, like right now, like everything's been upbeat and positive, and it's a step, right? If we're looking at a ladder, they've climbed another step on that ladder, but there's still a ways to go to get to that top.
Couple guys, I say your staff is determined by how good they can resurrect the dead from last year.
Yeah.
And by that, Trent Scott, Stromberg, Amari Rogers,
Davis.
Phil Mathis, Ridgeway. I want to know, is there life? We can't lose all those guys. If that, that would be a catastrophe. So hopefully there's some life in those guys that we can get value.
Oh, yeah. Listen, the depth is everything in the NFL, right? If you're playing 17 games and you don't have a bye until, December again, then depth is paramount. And it always is. But, when you add that extra game, I think it is even more so. So you need those guys, like you need Mathis to develop. Will he do so?
Right.
Stromberg, it just has to be healthy. I remember talking to Charles Leno about this. Like he said, those guys felt before he got hurt that he was the best center in that room. And so what does he do? But now clearly he's behind. He's not considered a starter. He got the oddish year. But can he develop into, one, being a quality backup, and two, maybe a starter in a couple of years? So, but you need him to be a quality backup. So does he get there? And is, how healthy is he? And listen, there's still questions about the tackle position. What's Wiley going to do? And, do they have a solution at left tackle? Those are questions to be answered, and they're pretty damn big ones too. So there are definitely a lot of questions to be answered. And all we know right now is the vibe out there is much better. That's what we know for sure, because, that's what we see and hear. The on-field stuff, there's still a lot more to be determined.
I'd like to zoom out from Commanders land for a quick second, John, and ask you something else. Our friend John Keim on the BetQL guest line. You can follow him at John_Keim, Keim. You can check out the John Keim Report on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast.
Okay.
And he's a bet. Now, I think this is really important, Doc, and I'd like to get your opinion on this as well. Dak Prescott, Cowboys quarterback. He wants the world to know, Keim, and he may be going into a contract here. I can't quite remember.
Why do I think this is disingenuous?
Dak Prescott, John, has said, I don't play for money. I have never cared for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I saw that.
What?
Yeah, then
Dallas Cowboy. He's a typical Cowboy.
I'm not saying that people don't love football.
Yeah.
You got to love football to make it to where he is.
He's really good at what he does.
But you play for money.
Then take the league minimum and let the Cowboys be able to pay the rest of their players. Take one for the team.
CD and Micah, you take care of those contracts.
Take care of them. Yeah, hook them up.
Listen, I'm writing for the money. I love to write. I like to do what I do. I kind of like the money too. That's what everybody, you're right. And the funny thing is even with players, one thing I will say, there are some people who only think, oh, they're only in it for the money. And then you watch what happens at the end of a season. Like if you lose a crushing playoff game, and like it's obviously beyond the money for most of these guys, right? For a lot of guys. And there's like you can have both thoughts, but yeah, like if you're not in it for the money, then 60 million isn't the discussion here.
I mean, remember the Ray Lewis quote was, "You pay me for Monday to Saturday, Sunday's free." Like once the game starts,
I think yes,
these guys are such elite competitors. I mean, hell, Doc, you played professionally. Did you like the money?
Well, you're a pro.
It's your job.
Yeah, but when in the middle of it during the season, you are with your boys. If they say you do the winner take all thing when you're playing for your guys, but like everybody goes to their job, they do love the camaraderie, love you people you work with, even though you guys treat Landfill and Walker, sometimes disrespectful. I know you love them. Yeah, I just wish guys wouldn't say that. Don't apologize for making money for what you're doing. Right. Everybody good at what they do makes money for it.
Yeah. You shouldn't have to apologize.
You don't have to apologize for that.
I agree with that. And, because again, like these guys, I would never begrudge what anybody gets in that league because of what they have to do on Sundays. It's brutal. And I admire what they can do, but also you're Terry McLaurin got a really good contract, clearly was important to him. I would be important to me too. And then you watch him in an OTA practice getting pumped up because when you're on that field, it is not about the money. When you're out there, it is not, you're not on that field. Like, he's not going at Jahan because I make 28 million or whatever. And you did no, it's like you did this and this can help you and it can help our team. That's what it was about. So there are, when you're in the negotiating room, it is about the money.
Right.
When you're on the field, it's about competition. And that's what these guys are. At the end of the day, they're, the guys who excel are elite competitors, not just players, but competitors. And so that's where you say that part. Yeah, I agree. When Dak's on a Sunday and you're dropping back, it's not about the money. You're not sitting there saying, well, I make 60 million. I don't care what happens. No, of course you do care. Right. But man, let's be real. So
remember when they called the draw in the playoff game?
Yeah.
And the time ran out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Niners. Yeah. But that's Dallas.
The question I have too is what, because he's always that litmus test or a Rorschach test, whatever, how good is Dak? And then what's the pay for him? But then if you don't, Dak is obviously a good quarterback, right? He can be a very good quarterback, but what's the cost? And, just like with when Kirk, right? How good is he? But if you don't have him, what happens? And I think we've seen here firsthand what happens. It's, so yeah.
Totally agree. John, thank you for the time, brother. Always good to talk.
Right, John.
Thanks, guys.